What's up, everybody? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Smash that subscribe, hit the like. Let's get into some Canadian federal politics. We've got Leanne Rood, who we're going to watch here for, I don't know, about 10 minutes. There'll be interaction, but man, just try to see how many times she is cock-blocked by these liberal woke folk. It's hard to tolerate. Anyways, we're gonna kick it off.
In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups. The globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Through you, Chair, I'm wondering, given the severe humanitarian suffering in Cuba, why is Canada not ensuring humanitarian aid is delivered directly to the people, bypassing the government entirely and publicly calling for an end to the totalitarian system that created this crisis in the first place?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee member for the question. Canada has a long-standing practice in Cuba and in other countries of working through international humanitarian partners in order to deliver our assistance, and that is our intended. That continues to be our practice in Cuba at this time.
I'm wondering if you can tell us how much Canadian taxpayer money has been spent since 2020 on embassy operations, consular services, and international assistance in Cuba, and does the department believe that it is responsible to continue spending Canadian tax dollars propping up diplomatic infrastructure in a country whose government is actively allied with adversaries currently targeting Canadian interests?
Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. I don't have the exact figures on how much our operations cost for the embassy on a year-to-year basis. However, I can say that roughly over the last 7 years, we have provided on average $6.5 million in development assistance to the Cuban people through our international humanitarian partner agencies. In terms of the question as to why we would maintain a diplomatic presence, I think traditionally we have maintained a diplomatic presence in Cuba due to our long-standing relationship with the country, where we have been committed to having an open dialogue with them with a view to promoting cooperation, collaboration, trade and investment ties, people-to-people ties, as well as being able to have frank and honest conversations on areas where we don't see eye to eye, such as human rights practices and international alignment with other state actors such as Nicaragua, previously Venezuela, Russia, and China.
So given that Cuba remains a one-party dictatorship that jails dissidents, restricts basic freedoms, and partners with regimes that are hostile to Canada, such as you mentioned, Russia, China, and Iran, why is the government of Canada still providing any taxpayer-funded assistance or maintaining full diplomatic relations rather than downgrading ties and directing all support exclusively to the Cuban people through independent civil society and faith-based organizations?
Mr. Chair, and thank you to the member for the question. I think, as I've stated previously, we continue to support the Cuban people through a variety of humanitarian assistance organizations, particularly UN agencies and other international NGOs, including Canadian NGOs that have a presence there, and we will continue to do so. That is to support. We continue to support the Cuban people. In terms of why we would maintain a presence, I think part of the reason we maintain a presence is the active people-to-people ties. Cuba is one of the countries where in the Caribbean region and in Central America that has the most visitors or most tourists on an annual basis. Last year, our figures are that approximately 700,000 Canadian tourists visited the island. The year before that, I believe it was 800,000. And so it's necessary for us to maintain an active diplomatic presence there. Also, I would note that Canada has an active commercial relationship with Cuba to the total of about $1 billion of trade on an annual basis, and Canadian companies do have investments in the country. Hence, we continue to maintain a diplomatic presence in order to assist Canadians both on the private side as tourists and in terms of their business interests.
Rather than continuing the failed policy of quiet diplomacy that has, quite frankly, achieved nothing for the Cuban people in decades, has the department considered or recommended any future assistance or trade preferences be made on concrete, verifiable steps towards free and fair multi-party elections and immediate release of all political prisoners?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. We have certainly raised time and again with our Cuban counterparts our concerns related to human rights concerns in terms of particularly political prisoners and their treatment. We also have raised concerns with regards to democratic governance and transparency of institutions. And I can say that we raise these regularly with our Cuban counterparts.
Well, the Cuban government receives support from Russia, including alleged recruitment of Cubans for its war in Ukraine, China through Belt and Road style arrangements, and Iran. How does continued Canadian engagement with Havana not undermine Canada's own national security and sanctions policies against these same hostile actors?
Chair, thank you. Again, I would go back to our conversations in terms of the desire to have an open and frank dialogue with the Cuban government, seeking to build constructive ties between our countries, and being able to influence their democratic governance to the best of our abilities. We have found a number of areas where we do, in fact, are aligned in terms of human rights policies, in terms of gender equity initiatives, as well as gender equity initiatives, as well as LGBTQI plus rights and the treatment of people.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here this afternoon. My first question, does the department have any numbers on the percentage of Cuban fuel imports that relied on shadow fleets, Russian, Venezuelan, or otherwise?
Mr. Chair, thank you. That's a very interesting question. In terms of shadow fleets, no, we don't, to the best of my knowledge, have details on the percentage. What we do know is that Cuba is able to roughly supply between 30 and 50% of its own energy needs, electricity needs, through a combination of solar power, which it's in the process of developing, through its own oil and gas resources, and that it made up the bulk of what it was not able to supply. It's not able to supply domestically through imports, principally previously from Venezuela and then from Mexico. And we understand that it has also received fuel exports from a variety of other countries in the past, imports, I should say, from a variety of other countries in the past as well.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. Is it correct that our government recently implemented additional sanctions on the Russian shadow fleet? And is this expected to have any effects in the Caribbean?
Unfortunately, I don't have those details at hand in terms of who we have input sanctions on. That is something that, Chair, with your permission, I would follow up with if that's of interest to the member.
That would be great. Thank you. Has the department done an assessment on the stability of the regime in Havana in the wake of the disruption of Cuba's oil supply?
Mr. Chair, well, an evaluation may be going further than what I would say. We certainly do monitor what is going on in the country and remain engaged to be able to understand what is happening on the ground. Despite the lack of fuel being imported due to the U.S. measures in particular, what I can say is that the Cuban government appears to be quite stable. It has developed itself through all areas of the economy and society in Cuba, and it shows no indication of being unstable at this time.
Could you speak to what coordination the Canadian government is taking with the United States in regards to additional sanctions that I spoke to with the Russian or Venezuelan shadow fleets, and what steps are being taken, if any, to mitigate these effects on nations like Cuba?
Mr. Chair, unfortunately, I don't have information on any discussions. I'm not privy to discussions with the United States with regards to our sanctions on Shadow Fleet. What I can say is that we do have regular and ongoing discussions with our U.S. counterparts, including with respect to Cuba and our mutual concerns about the Cuban people and their state and well-being.
So given the shift in the American strategy, has there been any long-term reassessments of Canada's Caribbean strategy?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we are all looking at the shift in what has happened in the last number of months and how that impacts our interests in the region. But I can't speculate on any future strategy for the Americas or a change in policy as a result of that at this time.
Okay, thank you. Changing lanes a wee bit, could you please answer why has the Government of Canada refused to impose targeted Magnitsky-style sanctions on senior Cuban officials responsible for human rights abuses, while it has sanctioned officials from other regimes for far less?
So
I'm curious what message this sends to dictators around the world.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's a legitimate question in general, but I think given today's focus on the humanitarian situation and consular affairs for Canadians, I think that question is a little bit out of scope. I was willing to kind of give you more discretion for the earlier questions, but this one kind of goes a little bit out of scope, and I would urge the member to please come back to the focus of the hearing.
Fair. So could we perhaps have some more details on the aid package? There was media reports that aid package is being sent to Cuba. Could you speak more specifically to what could be included in that?
Unfortunately, I can't speak more specifically to what may be included in the aid package. What I can say is that as Ministers LeBlanc and Ministers Anand have stated, we will provide humanitarian assistance. We are ready to provide humanitarian assistance to the Cuban people, and we're waiting, discussing with humanitarian partners on the ground in order to determine what will be included in that package.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we go to.
I'm wondering how many Canadians are left in Cuba?
Mr. Chair, that's a good question. What I will defer to my colleague, but what I understand is that we have roughly 6,500 Canadians who are registered with ROCA, Registration of Canadians Abroad. As one of the members of the committee earlier stated, we understand that there's somewhere around 5,000 long-term Canadian residents in Cuba, but the exact number on the ground, it's I don't have that statistic at hand, but maybe Sébastien, I don't know if you have further to say on that.
I don't have any more information other than to validate those numbers and to indicate that it's difficult to very precisely assess the number of Canadians. But over the past 10 days or 2 weeks, Canadian airlines have helped the return of Canadians who had tickets or who wanted to return to Canada to do so over that period of about 10 days when there were special return operations led by Air Canada, WestJet, and Air Transat.
And thank you for that answer. And I apologize for not knowing this off the top of my head. Do Canadians need a visa to go to Cuba?
Thank you, Chair. My understanding is that no, they do not require a visa.
So, and do we have a full consular? Is there a full consular complement in Cuba right now?
Yes, there is, Mr. Chair. Yes, there is.
So if you're not completely sure how many, just this week we saw some unrest in Mexico that made Canadians who were on the ground vulnerable, and of course there were some technical issues with the registration system. And I'm wondering, under the current circumstances, whether or not you have any concerns that the Canadians who are in Cuba right now, who we can't quite, or who you can't quite locate, whether or not there's a way to locate them if there is an escalation of the crisis.
Mr. Chair, my understanding, based on comments that our minister made yesterday, is that, in fact, our registration system is operating quite well, and that we saw an uptick in the number of registrants, I think in the case of Mexico, although I'm not here to talk about Mexico, of something like 8,000 in one day. So the Government of Canada does not track Canadian citizens abroad actively, and so, in fact, we require on them to register with us so that we can provide them with assistance and information if there is a situation. That is the way that we have typically approached, and we're here. We do maintain a full consular complement in Cuba, and we are able to provide and more than willing and happy to provide assistance to Canadians who are in Cuba at this time and require our help.
Given the, Cuba and Mexico are two of Canada's most popular vacation destinations, and given the sort of level of unrest that's occurring in the world, have you given any thought to some kind of registration system, some kind of mandatory registration system for Canadians who are traveling abroad?
Mr. Chair, that's certainly not an area of my expertise and not something that we have talked about or considered. To the best of my knowledge, I will defer to my colleague Sébastien, but my understanding is that we have in the past, and we continue at this time to remain and to rely on Canadians to register with us, and that Canadians don't always want us as a government to be tracking where they're traveling abroad, including where they're going on holiday. But Sébastien.
Point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président. J'ai bien compris l'objectif.
Yes, I've understood the reason we're meeting today is to talk about the humanitarian crisis in Cuba, and I think that my colleagues' questions aren't really in that vein. So I'll refer myself to you and defer myself, of course, to you, but I'd like to make sure that questions are about the humanitarian crisis.
This is for Canadians, so it is within the purview.
Thank you for that. And there has been, my understanding is that there was a period of significant consular drawdown in Cuba when some Canadian diplomatic staff were affected by some unexplained health incidents. I'm wondering whether or not, in the event of further civil unrest in Cuba, coinciding with a reduction in embassy staffing, whether there are agreements in place to provide emergency consular assistance were the two things to happen at the same time.
Mr. Chair.
A brief response because we're over time.
Okay, thank you. At this point in time, we don't foresee a drawdown due to the situation at hand. Obviously, there are conversations that we are ongoing. Just like every other organization on the ground, our embassy is experiencing firsthand fuel shortages, and so to sustain operations and ensure the well-being of our people in case the situation continues to decline, we are having conversations about our duty of care and planning for that. But at this point in time, we don't foresee an active drawdown, and we plan to continue to maintain our consular people on the ground. And I would say we have Sébastien's excellent team here in Ottawa that also are able to provide assistance to Canadians in need wherever they are in the world.
Ambassador, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and independent Cuban dissidents report systemic arbitrary arrest, torture, and the complete absence of free speech or independent media. Could you tell us how many political prisoners does your government currently hold, and when will every one of them be released?
Point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order. Like we were saying a little while ago, the idea today is to talk about consular services and the humanitarian crisis. But are we really here outside of the scope here of humanitarian crisis and consular services?
The focus, again, just as I stated earlier, is to focus on the humanitarian situation on the ground in Cuba and consular services for Canadians. I would strongly urge members to try as much as they can to stay within those parameters. I'm happy to allow some room of discretion that is connected to that, but the further we go away from that, the more difficult it would be for me as chair to allow that. But please proceed.
Well,
Sorry.
thank you very much, Mr. Chair, but I would respectfully say that this does fall under a humanitarian crisis. We're talking about political prisoners, and it would be appreciated if the witness could answer the question.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Chair. The issue of human rights has traditionally been manipulated against Cuba. In Cuba, no one is in prison for their beliefs, but for breaking the law. No one is in jail without having been tried following due process. Many of the so-called political prisoners have confessed to being paid agents in the service of a superpower that seeks to destroy the Cuban order. The revolution has a long history of human rights achievements, fundamental rights like universal education, free public health care, the end of discrimination based on race, sex, or sexual orientation. Cuba is also founding member of the United Nations Human Rights Council and cooperates with the periodic reviews and conduct of the human rights situation in our country. And I have to say that the true and massive threat to human rights in Cuba is the economic blockade by the U.S. Nowadays, we have a lot of problems in the hospitals, children that have no possibilities to receive the proper treatment to cancer or hemodialysis or things like that, simply because they are trying to asphyxiate our society. So we could talk about human rights for a long time, but I don't think we are perfect, but I don't think either that we should be pointed out on this. Thank you.
Well, Ambassador, it's interesting that you say that about the United States because your government claims to be willing to talk to the United States as equals, and that's a quote from your own government. So I'm wondering, does that same willingness extend to allowing the Cuban people to speak freely, form opposition parties, and vote in free and fair elections, or is dialogue only acceptable when it helps preserve the current monopoly on power?
Point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président. Cette motion.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. There is a humanitarian crisis in Cuba right now, and this is what the motion is all about. And we are supposed to be looking at the different ways on how we can come in aid of the people who are living unprecedented humanitarian crisis. The idea here is that is why we're here. This is why we're all here today. There was a specific motion that was voted on by the committee because otherwise in the next sessions we're going to be going all over the map and not respecting the spirit of things, and I'm not interested in that.
To the member, I would urge MP Rood to try to come back to the topic that was agreed to by all the members. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chair, I can think of no greater concern than the oppressive actions the socialist dictatorship imposes on its own people. So I will go back to the question again. Your government claims to be willing to talk to the United States as equals. So
the dialogue between Cuba and the United States is I'm sorry, outside of the scope. I'm happy to allow some room away from the core issue, which is humanitarian condition, but the relationship and the dialogue between, if it exists, between the United States and Cuba, you would agree, MP would not be under the under the discussion, the topic, which is the humanitarian situation on the ground in Cuba. So I would urge you to probably rephrase the question.
Well, my question, Chair, was not about the United States. It was does the same willingness extend to allowing the Cuban people to speak freely, form opposition parties, and vote in free, fair elections? That was my question.
Okay, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, Honorable Lion Root, for the question. It's true that Cuba wants to speak as equals alike with the United States and with other countries. It is our right, I believe. We are an independent country. And it's true that in Cuba we have only one political party. The thing is that the electoral system in Cuba, that, by the way, is quite similar to the Canadian one, parties don't nominate the persons to be candidates. They are nominated by the people. And directly, the political party doesn't take part on this. People in Cuba can speak freely, and they can express themselves freely. And actually, they do so normally in our democracy system. The parliament in Cuba is, the members of the parliament are elected in constituencies, like in Canada. The new parliament in assembly elects the head of government, who is not elected in a general vote by the entire population. The members of parliament serve for a period of 5 years, and the present assembly is the 10th legislature. Every system has its virtues and defects. I do not believe there is a perfect model. They generally reflect the history and tradition of each country and in laws. It is true that I respect your opinion. You can think differently than me on this, but in Cuba, campaigns do not involve expenses from the state budget or private sources. The candidates are elected or not through political propaganda, but based on their merits before the voters. And whoever wants to be a candidate can be it. It only needs the support of...
Yes, my time is running out, though, Ambassador, and I do have one final question before the end of my time. Ambassador, Cuba has actively recruited its citizens, including civilians and members of its military and intelligence services, to fight for Russia and its illegal war against Ukraine. Does your government deny these reports? And if not,
so this was asked before as well. I let it slide then. I think that's out of scope. You would agree? Of course, you know, our collective
briefing note as a suggested question for the
exactly. It's in the briefing notes as a suggested question.
Corporation, Infrastructure Canada, the Department of Finance Canada, and the Canada Lands Company, all working on housing, land, and financing. So, if all these agencies already exist, what exactly will this new body do that they cannot? Will it build homes faster? Will it cut permits? Will it remove taxes like the GST on new homes? No, it will simply add more overhead and administrative delay. Housing affordability will not improve by multiplying paperwork. It's time for this Liberal government to cut red tape, get out of the way, and let builders build.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, another monumental actor has left us. Raymond Bouchard was an extraordinary star in Quebec's cultural universe, and we will miss his voice, his gift of gab, and his generosity in acting and speaking more than words can express. Mr. Speaker, the loss of these extraordinary artists cannot be undone, and each of these deaths erases a little bit of a wonderful period in Quebec's social and cultural history. It is sad. Raymond Bouchard gave us unique characters such as Mayor Le Sage in La Grande Séduction and Léo in La Florida. I also think of his portrayal of Jacques Parizeau in the series On l'Évêque, or his role as Paul Vézina in Scoop. Raymond Bouchard was proud to belong and to be one of his people, a sovereigntist, certainly, but perhaps above all else, a great ambassador and promoter of the Quebec culture, which he cherished. To his family, loved ones, and friends, to those who admired him, allow me to offer my sincere condolences on behalf of the Bloc Québécois. Raymond, thank you for everything.
The honourable member for Surrey Newton.
Mr. Speaker, as we celebrate Black History Month, I rise to recognize the important contributions of Black Canadians and work of Black Business Association of British Columbia. Surrey is home to the largest Black population in our province. Black entrepreneurs are creating jobs, driving innovation, and strengthening our economy, even as many face systemic barriers. Led by co-founders Nerissa Alan and Clavia Lane, the Black Business Association of BC is addressing these challenges through programs that support market access, regulatory compliance, and international trade. They help businesses grow and compete globally by investing in equity and inclusion in Canada's future and build a stronger, more inclusive Canada. Today is Pink Shirt Day. Let's stand against bullying and stand together in kindness.
The honourable member for Terra Nova, the Peninsula.
Mr. Speaker, just this morning, I had a phone call from a friend of mine. She's a teacher, a government worker, but life is so unaffordable that her internet is about to be cut tomorrow because she can't keep up with this liberal inflation. And she's not the only one. According to an RBC poll, 64% of millennials are worried about their financial future under this Prime Minister. Many Canadians are bankrolling their debt into mortgages. Mortgage debt has now reached $2.6 trillion. But unfortunately, millennials can't do this because they can't afford a home. Nearly 60% of millennials don't even have enough money at the end of the month to pay their bills, let alone begin saving for a home. Conservatives will continue to fight for affordable Canada, a Canadian economy that creates powerful paychecks and lowers inflation so that young people across our country can save for a home and save for a future.
The honourable member for Halifax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assalamu alaikum. Across the country, Muslim communities are celebrating Ramadan, a holy month of fasting, prayer, and reflection. I want to recognize the resiliency and generosity of Nova Scotia's Muslim communities, demonstrating the strength that comes from unity and support. I also want to highlight the important work of the Ummah Society, which recently received $1.2 million from our government's Youth Gang Prevention Fund. This program is focused on keeping at-risk youth away from a life of crime. By providing mentorship and community resources, Gangbusters is helping to create safer, stronger communities for all of Nova Scotia. I'm proud to stand with Muslim communities and with organizations like the Ummah Society during Ramadan as we work together for a more inclusive and safer Nova Scotia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Mission Matchtree Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, Liberals have created an immigration crisis that is straining housing, healthcare, and jobs. As of January, non-permanent residents outnumbered unemployed Canadians, and the Liberals are expanding immigration streams that push our young people further away from employment. 6 million Canadians cannot find a family doctor, but taxpayers are now spending $1 billion per year to cover healthcare costs of refugee claimants. And the government has no clear plan for the nearly 3 million temporary residents with permits expiring this year. Canadians deserve a competent immigration minister. Her own caucus isn't confident in her ability to handle these out-of-control problems. It's time for decisive action. Only with strong leadership can we protect Canadians, prioritize jobs for our youth, and secure a sustainable future for our country.
The honourable member for Alfred Pellan.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. History Month, I'd like to pay tribute to the individuals and organizations that showcase my community of Alfred Pellan through the essential work of La Colombite Community Centre, a pillar of mutual aid and engagement. I would like to thank its director, Madame Cardi-Rosier, for her leadership and ongoing commitment to families and youth. I'd like to recognize the commitment of Pastor Emmanuel Laurent and Father Claudel Petithomme, whose work contributes to social bonds and the well-being in our community. I would also like to acknowledge the valuable contribution of Father Ronald Legerme and Marie-Tessa Pierre. who through their initiatives and dedication provide help and support to those in need and strengthen the social fabric of our community, not to mention the remarkable commitment of Robert Alexander, my most loyal friend and volunteer, whose consistency and dedication make a real difference in Alfred-Pelon. To all these people, thank you for being so committed to Canada's multicultural mosaic.
Honourable member for Red Deer.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian healthcare system is in crisis. 6 million Canadians don't have a family doctor, and wait times have doubled over the past 10 years. But rather than putting Canadians' health first, the Liberal government interim federal health program allows fraudulent and rejected asylum claimants to be bumped to the front of the line while Canadians pay for it. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says the IFHP will cost $1.5 billion annually to pay for supplementary coverage like vision, counselling, and home care. These are things that Canadians don't receive, and yet Liberals make them pay for it. The fraudsters taking advantage of our generosities. Veterans who served our country and young people battling mental health crises are offered nothing by these Liberal government, but rejected refugees get tax-paid funded psychologists and therapists. A nation that refuses to put its own citizens first is deeply disturbing. I urge the Liberals to reflect what kind of message their vote will send to Canadians on the
Hampton South.
Today on Pink Shirt Day, we stand together to send a clear message. Bullying in any form has no place in our communities. Bullying has lasting impacts on mental health, academic success, and overall well-being, affecting people of all ages. Our government will continue to invest in mental health supports, Little Kids Help Phone, which provides immediate confidential support 24 hours a day. And while these supports are essential, each of us can help foster a culture where seeking help is encouraged, stigma is reduced, and kindness lead the way. Simple acts of compassion help build safer, more inclusive communities across Canada. Mr. Speaker, everyone deserves to feel valued and supported and to know they have a safe space in our communities, because compassion, kindness is always stronger than hate, Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The honourable member for Calgary-Knowles Hill.
This week, the Prime Minister said, we have the immigration system under control. And his immigration minister said, my job is easy. At the end of this year, there will be nearly 3 million people in Canada on expired or expiring visas. And last year, the Liberals only managed to remove 22,000 of them. And the Liberals are still issuing hundreds of thousands of new temporary work permits this year. If her job is so easy, what's the minister's plan to get nearly 3 million people to leave?
Great question. The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Thank you very much. The job that I have is never easy. It is one of the toughest jobs in government, and the reason is many Canadians and many people are looking at our government to control immigration and to keep it sustainable. With regards to the temporary, we have targets, we have ranges for temporary residents. Those that are on temporary status have the opportunity to extend. They also have the opportunity to use some of our permanent pathways. Otherwise, they are expected to leave.
Good job. The honourable member for Calgary-Knowles Hill.
The immigration minister has been in her job for a year now, and she was appointed to get since she's appointed, we've been getting disgusting stories every other week about non-citizens convicted of serious crime getting leniency in order to avoid deportation. She could have been lobbying her cabinet colleagues to make sure that laws are changed and that victims get the justice that they deserve, but she's done nothing. If the Prime Minister wants to move at a scale and speed not seen in generations, why doesn't he just fire his failed minister now?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On my record and work on immigration, the record speaks for itself.
Yes.
We're taking back control on the immigration system. We're returning immigration to sustainable levels. Our asylum levels are down by a third. The number of international students is down by a third. The no temporary foreign workers are down by a half. We have exceeded our Francophone immigration targets. We are bringing global talents. From July to October 2025, the population of Canada decreased slightly. We are on track, and we've met all our targets.
Good. The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, her record sure does speak for itself. In fact, 10 Liberal members of Parliament had comments on her record today. They were quoted in a CBC article saying what millions of Canadians already know, that the Prime Minister's immigration minister isn't getting her jobs done. She won't take basic meetings, processing times haven't been fixed, and the asylum backlog has ballooned to 300,000 people under her watch. I've said it before, I'll say it again. She is a bad minister. If the Liberal caucus doesn't even think she should have her job, why is the Prime Minister still defending her?
Honourable Minister.
We are building an immigration system that keeps Canada strong. That is our mission. That is our mandate. That is what Canadians elected us to do.
Yes.
That is what we will continue to do. In June, we introduced legislation C2 to protect the asylum system against sudden increases in claims. The Conservatives opposed it. In October, we brought forward new legislation C12 that will protect our borders and strengthen the immigration system.
That's right.
The Conservatives have delayed it at every stage.
Right.
We're building an immigration system that is sustainable and that will keep Canada strong.
That's right. Honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, today the CBC reported what we all see every day, that the immigration minister's own Liberal colleagues cringe awkwardly as she fumbles her way through serious issues. I've had the misfortune of sitting across from her in Immigration Committee where she can't answer basic questions about bills that she has presented to Parliament. While her infamous salad quote was admittedly crazy, the immigration portfolio is no laughing matter. Under a Conservative government, Canada's immigration system functioned well. It was fair and orderly, but not with this minister. Why does she still have her job?
The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président, en matière de...
Mr. Speaker, on immigration, this government has reduced asylum claims by a third. The number of international students in Canada has gone down by a third. From July to October 2025, the population of Canada slightly decreased after several years. We have increased the percentage of the economy stream to 64% in order to attract world-class talent. We are building a world-class immigration system. The honourable member for Charles-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister stated that the immigration system is under control, but the Liberals have actually broken the system. The facts are that 86% of fake asylum seekers are still in Canada. Thousands are still wanted by the CBSA, and appropriate security checks are not taking place. And these individuals are placing pressure on our schools and healthcare system in Quebec. Will the Prime Minister finally fire this minister, the Honourable Government House Leader? Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are proud to serve side by side with this immigration minister. We are proud of our immigration system. We are very proud to have the first Lebanese woman in this position with a remarkable roadmap as a Nova Scotia MP and here in the House. The results speak for themselves. Asylum claims have gone down by a third. Same thing for international students. And from July to October, the population of Canada went down. This minister is doing her job. The honourable member for Charles-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, this is not a personal matter. This is a professional matter. It is clear that this minister does not understand her files. 10 of her colleagues said on Radio-Canada that the minister is not familiar with her files and is incompetent. We need a minister who understands what's happening in Canada and can manage the immigration system. Will the Prime Minister finally fire his minister, the Honourable Government House Leader? Mr. Speaker, you know who can't answer questions about immigration? People on the Conservative side who have no immigration policy. And they took a week to think about it and decided to come back to this House and punch down and try to bully the most vulnerable people, refugee seekers. For example, they're trying to kick out wounded children from the Ukraine war. They don't want kids like that to get health care. It is the Conservatives who don't have an immigration policy. On this side of the House, we are proud of our minister and our record. The honourable member for Charlesbourg Saint-Charles.
Saint-Jean, je m'excuse.
I'm sorry, the honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Curum software fiasco, with its $5 billion cost overrun, is the last straw for Quebec, and the National Assembly of Quebec has just adopted a unanimous motion to state that federal IT projects and their cost overruns represent complete wastage on Quebec taxes. All Quebec elected officials have asked the federal government to create an arm's-length inquiry on federal IT contracts. When will we finally see this inquiry? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, modernizing the government is something we are currently working on, and it is already showing results. When it comes to old age security benefits, currently we are servicing 7 million Canadians with a new modernized system that has replaced a system that was really outdated. The project is in the budget and is part of a much broader modernization project for all Government of Canada benefits. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly unanimously going over projections, even though the Auditor General already had pointed that out in 2023. Once again, when will there be a public inquiry? The Honourable Minister of Employment.
You say things, it doesn't make it true. In fact, the Curum software program is actually under...
Couldn't hear, sorry. Couldn't hear. We'll let the Honourable Minister... We'll let the Honourable Minister answer the question. The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families may continue.
Mr. Speaker, over and over and over we hear this number that's patently wrong, and I have no other way to say it, Mr. Speaker. This is the largest transformation of the way we deliver benefits in the history of this country. We are moving 3 important benefit programs from paper-based, old-school technology to full modernization where people will be able to apply and are right now able to apply online. Mr. Speaker, this
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Well, I wouldn't attack the credibility of the Auditor General if I were the Minister, Mr. Speaker. These Liberals seem to think this is just a joke. They're just ignoring the problem, and they keep on spending taxpayer money. The National Assembly has reminded us that over 3 failed IT projects, Ottawa has wasted more than $10 billion. That's 5 times more than it would take the Government of Quebec to repair 227 hospital buildings. But there's no accountability in Ottawa. The Liberals keep saying that there haven't been any cost overruns. When will we have a public inquiry? The Honourable Minister.
As I've said, 7.7 million seniors have been transitioned to this new software. There are still some seniors who have applied for their benefits that are waiting. That number is dropping, Mr. Speaker, every week, every month, as we anticipate it will continue to do. And, Mr. Speaker, our officials are working very hard night and day to make sure that all cases are resolved. If the member opposite has a person in his riding who needs urgent attention, I suggest he share that name with me or have them call Service Canada. We haven't received any names yet from that member of Parliament.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Liberal immigration minister is out of her depth, and the numbers prove it. 86% of rejected asylum seekers remain in Canada. 25,000 people were admitted without a proper security screening, and nearly 3 million temporary visa holders are nearing expiry with no clear plan in place. And yesterday, the Prime Minister claimed that the system is, quote, under control. But there are no real controls left. The Liberals dismantled them, and the minister has shown no ability to restore order. So with results like these, Why is she still in her job?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I will park some of the factual inaccuracies that were included in the member's question, but let me just take a moment to say that I have been proud to work alongside my colleague for Nova Scotia, not just in her current capacity as Minister of Immigration for Canada, but previously when she served as the Immigration Minister in my home province of Nova Scotia. She was uniquely responsible for bringing the healthcare workers that provide care to my neighbours. She was uniquely responsible in helping resettle refugees from Syria when the federal Conservatives wouldn't lift a finger. She is working on a program that may be a difficult problem to solve, but she is restoring integrity to the immigration system, and the personal attacks are cruel, inappropriate, and beneath this House.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
It is that minister who left the immigration minister with the mess that she has to clean up. And he knows that even Liberal MPs who have been passed over for a decade can see that she's out of her depth because of the mess that he left. Yeah. These are direct quotes from them. She has no idea how to respond. She doesn't make sense. She puts her foot in her mouth. At what point will the Prime Minister acknowledge that this file requires real leadership and a serious course correction without the two of them?
The Honourable Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, we see what the Conservatives are doing here, pitting Canadians against asylum seekers. Some of them helped us during COVID, deliberately confusing fraudulent claimants against failed asylum claimants. This isn't a dog whistle, it's a foghorn. And I know it's Lent, so I do implore them to show a little grace. So instead of shedding MPs for Lent, Mr. Speaker, which we appreciate, maybe they need to shed this line of questioning.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
They've just put up a third failed immigration minister to answer for the question. This is actually a really serious issue, and they can talk down members of this House. They can call them bad people all they want, but Canada's immigration consensus is crumbling. Stakeholders aren't getting their calls returned. Controls are gone, putting pressure on housing, on healthcare, and on jobs, and the minister is MIA throughout all of it. The House deserves a straight answer. When is she getting fired?
The Honourable Minister.
So, Mr. Speaker, let's assume for a second that the Conservatives actually want to help the situation. Perhaps the member opposite can turn to her right, talk to the leader of the opposition who's changed so many ridings, he's Parliament's own temporary foreign worker, and ask him to stop going around the country pandering to communities, promising them not to be deported, and promising visas for everyone. That might help, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, they're putting up all the failed previous immigration ministers to speak for her. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal has created a sentencing discount system. Liberal government has created a sentencing discount system for foreign criminals. The Prime Minister claims that they've got this system under control. Well, let's look at the case of Rajbir Singh. This criminal sexually assaulted a young woman and received a conditional discharge so he would not have a criminal conviction registered against him so he could stay in the country. Under this Liberal PM sentencing discount policy, not only are dangerous criminals allowed to stay in the country, they get released early. When will this Prime Minister fire his immigration minister, or does he think that she's got it all under control?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the assertion of the member in the opposition party is absolutely false, Mr. Speaker.
Joke.
When somebody is before the courts, somebody's facing criminal charges and conviction, they're deemed to be inadmissible in Canada, Mr. Speaker. The Canada Border Service agencies take these very seriously, and they have admissible individuals removed. Last year, we removed over 22,000 individuals from Canada. But let me be very clear. The issue of lawful access is a tool that law enforcement have been asking for. The party opposite has absolutely failed in supporting those policies so that we can have a safer country, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
If they had confidence in the immigration minister, then she would be answering these questions herself, Mr. Speaker. let's take a look at another case. Joyson Lewis assaulted his girlfriend, grabbed her, tearing her shirt in the process, and threw her to the ground when he hit her again. The judge in the case sentenced this foreign criminal to 9 months of probation, specifically so that the conviction would not be entered into the record so he could stay in Canada. Why is this Liberal government doubling down on a policy that gives sentencing discounts to foreign criminals, and when will this Prime Minister fire this minister?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is a rule of law country, one that respects the rule of law. Nobody is above the law, Mr. Speaker. And the discounts that this individual is talking about is absolutely false. What I will say is that the Canada Border Service Agencies removes those who are inadmissible to Canada, those with criminal penalties. But let me also be very clear, Mr. Speaker. The party opposite absolutely refuses to move on lawful access, a tool that law enforcement has been asking for from coast to coast to coast. This is the record that party has in terms of defending the rights of Canadians and keeping Canada safer, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, by the end of this year, 3 million temporary residents will have had their visas expire, and the government has no enforcement plan to ensure that they leave. Last year alone, 1.5 million permits expired, and the Liberals just simply assumed that they would magically comply. The system is out of control. Housing is strained. Youth unemployment is rising. Our healthcare system is broken. Canadians are clearly paying the price. So when will the Prime Minister take responsibility for this failure and fire his immigration?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, we have been getting this immigration system under control. We've just seen that Bill C-12 is about to pass from the Senate. This will not allow people to abuse our asylum system. And Mr. Speaker, if they cared so much about crime, they would have passed C-14 a long time ago. We could have had that bill passed back in Christmas time, Mr. Speaker. It's 80 different changes of the Criminal Code of Canada. We're strengthening our criminal code more than we have seen in generations, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Long Range Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, competence is not talking points, it's measured by results. 33,000 non-citizens listed as wanted by the CBSA is not competent. When 86% of rejected asylum claimants remain in Canada, that's not compassion, that's a system that is not being enforced. The minister has lost control of the file, the confidence of stakeholders, and now members of their own caucus are questioning her ability, and Canadians are paying the price. So once again, will the Prime Minister take responsibility for this failure and fire his immigration minister?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, if the Conservatives really cared about these issues, they would support us in our responsible legislation that we are putting forward. We're bringing down asylum numbers, Mr. Speaker, in this country, and we're reducing fraud in our system with the leadership of the immigration minister, Mr. Speaker. If the Conservatives cared, they would stop their divisive politics and their hate tactics, and they would join us in making sure that legislation passes swiftly through this House, and they would stop the obstruction.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Pierre, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have cut $5 billion for public transportation, and Quebec never even got a dime from that fund, but Ontario and Western Canada have received a lot of money. And what's weird is that sum, $5 billion, is exactly the same as the cost overruns for the Curum software, which doesn't even work. So that's $5 billion more for consultants and $5 billion less for public transportation. Why don't the Liberals invest Quebecers' money within Quebec instead of making consultants rich?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Merci pour la question. The good news, Mr. Speaker, is that we have a Building Communities Fund, strong fund, which includes public transit. This is a $51 billion infrastructure fund that this House has the opportunity to support in the Budget Implementation Act. $51 billion, and a significant percentage of that applies to public transit. We are in talks with the Government of Quebec to pursue the opportunity for public transit investment. We hope to conclude those negotiations and be able to ongoing invest in public transit across Quebec as we have across the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Repentigny.
The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, this $5 billion cut to the public transportation fund is being criticized by everyone. The Transit Alliance, a coalition including Équiterre, Trajectoire Québec, Vivre en Ville, and many other organizations. They're all saying the federal government is hurting users, mobility, and its own climate targets. And what's even worse is that Quebec did not get a single dime of this money, whereas Ontario and Vancouver hit the jackpot. Will the Liberals cancel this cut and ensure that Quebec gets its fair share? Once again, thank you for the question.
To pursue public transit investment with the government of Quebec. We are at the table, we are negotiating, we welcome the opportunity to invest. There is significant dollars available in the Build Communities Strong Fund. When the BIA is passed, we will be able to move that funding through on top of the $25 billion that's available in the Canada Public Transit Fund. So you add all that up, there's a significant increase to the public transit funding that is available, and there's more flexibility for provinces, territories, and cities to pursue. Thank you.
The honourable member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
The Prime Minister falsely claims he has our immigration system under control. But when a non-Canadian on a student visa can spy on his female housemates for 6 months and not get deported, Canadians know the system is out of control. He recorded them in various states of undress, Mr. Speaker. He recorded them using the bathroom. But instead of protecting these women, Liberal sentencing discounts allow immigration consequences to benefit the offender. When did the Liberals abandon vulnerable women? And when will the Prime Minister finally take accountability and fire his immigration minister?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, it's completely the opposite. The Conservatives would like Canadians to believe that there is some policy in place. There is no policy in place. The provinces should respond for those types of actions that are happening in provincial criminal courts, not federal policy, Mr. Speaker. If anything, we are strengthening the Criminal Code of Canada to make sure that criminals face the penalties that they should for these outrageous crimes.
The honourable member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
That's not an answer, Mr. Speaker, and this isn't isolated. When a non-citizen can sexually assault someone's 18-year-old daughter twice and not get deported, the system is out of control. This offender was found guilty of sexual assault. The judge knew he would be deported, but then they gave him a discharge and probation so another criminal stays in Canada. The Liberals accuse us of all kinds of things, Mr. Speaker, but their judges are pleading down at the expense of our daughters. So I'll ask again, Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister fire his immigration minister and get immigration back under control?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, these are not our judges. These are Canadian judges appointed by provinces. Our criminal court hearings happen at the provincial level, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Conservatives would like Canadians to believe that there is some type of federal policy that is making judges make these decisions. There is absolutely no such policy, Mr. Speaker. If anything, we are tightening our Criminal Code of Canada. In C-16 and in C-14, we're making sure that we support our victims of sexual assault and that we make conditional sentences no longer a thing.
L'honorable député de
The honourable member for Montmorency Charlevoix. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said the immigration system is under control. I'm very sorry, but that is not at all the case. In Quebec, for example, there are 200,000 asylum seekers within Quebec, which is putting pressure on our healthcare and education and childcare systems. And today we learned in Radio-Canada that the Liberal immigration minister doesn't understand her files and is not at all available on the ground. Will the Prime Minister finally stand up and fire his immigration minister, the Honourable Government House Leader? Mr. Speaker, as my colleague knows very well, because this question has been asked already a number of times today and has been answered by the Minister of Immigration and other colleagues, asylum claims have actually gone down by a third under this minister. Same thing for international students And between July and October 2025, Canada's population even shrank slightly after having grown for several years previously. That is this immigration minister's record. Meanwhile, what is the policy of the Conservative Party?
I have on my list here the Honourable Member for Montmorency Charlevoix, but I see the member for Richemont-Athabasca is rising. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For weeks now, I've been rising in this place to ask questions about the Curam IT software project. The cost ballooned from $1.6 billion to $6.6 billion. That's a $5 billion cost overrun. There are 78,000 seniors waiting to receive their benefits. We've asked dozens of questions. The Liberals haven't answered our questions. Yesterday, I asked if there was anyone taking leadership on the government benches who would take ownership of this file so that I could go and see that person, so that they could handle these files. This is unacceptable. Canadians are paying out of pockets for this. This is wasted money. What will the Liberal government be doing about this? The Honourable Minister of Employment and Families.
It's ironic that the member opposite is saying that he's asked who to speak to, and I've said about 15 times, come and speak to me directly if you have cases that you need accelerated. I've also been very clear in this House, Mr. Speaker, that this is a massive transformation of software. We have a portfolio of money allowed to us to do that transformation, and in fact, we're under budget, Mr. Speaker. So the member opposite, if he needs to be briefed, I ask him to come to me immediately after question period, and I will talk to him.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Liberal Prime Minister said that he had the immigration system under control. Yet the Liberals have abandoned security checks, systematic review process, out approximately 25,000 people into the country without any of them having a single conversation with any government employee. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, where is the Minister of Immigration? She's not answering any questions. The situation is so serious that even Liberal MPs are calling for her resignation. Can the Prime Minister take responsibility and finally dismiss his Liberal Minister of Immigration? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
This one, let me be clear about the facts. Officers rigorously review each and every claim before they reach the IRB, and nobody can claim asylum in Canada without questioning. To keep Canadians safe, CBSA does the front-end security screening on all adult refugee claimants. There is no rubber stamping of any files and any claims. Each one is assessed individually on the merits by highly trained decision makers. Our government worked hard to bring the asylum claims down by more than a third last year. We will keep working hard to do that. We've got Bill C-12 in front of us. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sault Ste. Marie Algoma.
Speaker, we know that Canadian workers are the backbone of a strong economy. The government's new workforces alliances are bringing together workers, industry, and training partners to build the skilled and resilient workforce that Canada needs for the future. Now more than before, Canadian workers need their government to have their backs. Can the Minister for Jobs and Families tell this House how our government is supporting workers and strengthening the Canadian economy now and in the future?
The Honourable Minister for Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, the Member of Parliament for Sault Ste. Marie Algoma is a force to be reckoned with. In fact, it was such an honour to stand with him at the Algoma Steel Mill to support the defence of Canadian-made steel. And I want to thank him for his ongoing advocacy. Mr. Speaker, it was a very proud moment for me to announce 5 additional workforce alliances. What these are, Mr. Speaker, are a way, and something that industry has been calling for a very long time, a way to streamline skills training with the needs of industry. I'm so thrilled that we are working strongly with workers and employers across this country to build Canada strong.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister falsely stated that he had the immigration system under control. Does he realize his own immigration department is rubber stamping asylum claims from terror-sponsoring countries like Afghanistan, Yemen, and Iran? We just heard that the Minister doesn't even realize that she's auto-approving claims from Pakistan, where one of its nationals was trying to claim asylum when he was arrested in Quebec for allegedly plotting a terrorist attack against Jews in New York City. This incompetence hurts legitimate refugees and all Canadians. Now even their own caucus is calling for the Prime Minister's hand-picked immigration to be fired. When will the Prime Minister wake up and fire this immigration minister?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, every file for asylum comes through a very rigorous security check, Mr. Speaker, both through CBSA as well as through CSIS. Our law enforcement work every single day to keep Canadians safe, and the rigorous process to ensure that those who are inadmissible are deemed to be inadmissible and are removed is something that our law enforcement agencies do each and every day, Mr. Speaker. The assertions made by the opposition is absolutely false.
Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, it's embarrassing. The ministers don't even know how their own system works. Yesterday, the Prime Minister falsely claimed that he had the immigration system under control. He blindly expressed full confidence in his immigration minister. These are the facts. 300,000 asylum claims, a 4-year backlog, nearly 3 million temporary residents with expiring permits, and no plan to remove them. Auto-approving asylum claims from terror-sponsoring countries without any human intervention. Ask any Canadian. Immigration is far from under control. Now even Liberal MPs are questioning her place at the cabinet table. Will the Prime Minister finally wake up, listen to his own MPs, and fire his incompetent immigration minister?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, what I can say is that we have a robust refugee protection system that ensures the safety and security of Canadians. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, we have a system through the Immigration Refugee Board where every single file is assessed for its merit and it's in compliance with the Refugee Convention of 1951. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, before somebody is granted permanent residency, there is a vigorous security check that enables Canada to ensure the safety and security of Canadians from our law enforcement agencies, including the Canada CSIS as well as the Canada Border Service Agency. The assertions made by
the Honourable Member for Riding Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the Immigration Minister at Health Committee how many more patients our healthcare system could handle. She laughed, then said it wasn't a fair question for immigration. Not a fair question, Mr. Speaker. 6 million Canadians don't have a doctor. People are dying waiting for care. Our system is at capacity, and she doesn't even know it. If the minister sitting immigration levels doesn't think healthcare capacity is her business, then she has no business being minister. So will the Prime Minister fire her today?
The Honourable Health Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Canada has the values to which the world aspires. We have always been and always will be committed to fundamental rights and human dignity. And we believe in our universal healthcare system. Let's not play politics at the expense of asylum seekers. As I just said, we must build a better healthcare system, and we are doing it, working with provinces and territories. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Riding Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Immigration Minister falsely told the Health Committee that rejected asylum claimants lose the premium health benefits her government provides. But she was wrong. In fact, her own department had to correct her. Rejected claimants remain fully eligible for premium health benefits like physiotherapy and home care under the interim federal health program. A minister who doesn't know her own program has no business running it. Will the Prime Minister take accountability and fire his immigration minister?
The Honourable Health Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to remind my colleague that healthcare is provincial jurisdiction, not federal jurisdiction. The Health Minister and the Immigration Minister have the responsibility to work with provinces and territories in offering services, and as you know, the Immigration Minister has nothing to do with who offers or provides services on the ground. Thank you.
Canada's immigration system is broken, and the Liberal Immigration Minister is treating this critical file like a game of hide and seek. She's not very good at hiding, but the Liberals are very good at deflecting. Even her own Liberal colleagues have called out her abject incompetence As the minister tries to hide, Canadians are left witnessing youth unemployment crisis and 3 million temporary resident visas expiring in 2026. Will this minister stop playing games and start taking responsibility for the mess that she and the Liberals created?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, it's clear without much substance in the question that's actually being put on the floor that the Conservatives had decided, for political reasons, to try to use immigration as a wedge issue in Canadian politics. They could be using their questions to focus on the Canada-U.S. relationship. They could be using it to focus on how we can improve healthcare, how we can grow the economy. But no, for more than 10 years that I've been elected as a member of Parliament, time and time again, when things get tough, the Conservatives pivot to attacking newcomers. We are dealing with, in some instances, some of the most vulnerable people in the world. I wish we could focus on...
Whoa. There's a lot of noise coming from that side. I know there's some coming from the end over there, and I've got my eye on a certain member over there, but there's a lot of noise coming from that side. So, okay. The Honourable Minister may continue, but please let's keep it down.
I'll conclude very quickly, Mr. Speaker. This is a time for thoughtful debate on policy solutions that will advance the country's interests, not a time for immature name-calling.
The Honourable Member for Leduc-Wetaskiwin.
Less than a year ago, the Liberal election platform promised that the federal deficit would be limited to an already eye-popping $62 billion. That deficit exploded to $78 billion in the fall, with billions more added since. Our federal debt is now nearly 2.5 times what it was just a decade ago. Meanwhile, the Toronto Star warns this morning that Canadian household debt has risen to a record $2.6 trillion. How have we gone in just a decade from a country with a balanced budget and the richest middle class in the world to a country where Canadians are taking on record personal debt to pay off bills passed down to them by their own federal government?
Unbelievable.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Debt and deficit that are fiscally sustainable, because the IMF has testified to that fact. The Bank of Canada has testified to that fact. We continue to put in measures, of course, to build up the economy. An opportunities agenda is exactly what this country needs right now. We have seen this government move ahead to ensure that the resources of this country get to market, to build up infrastructure, to make sure that this country can compete on a global level in a changing international landscape. If Conservatives want to be serious, they can join us in those initiatives by pursuing policies that are thoughtful, or they can keep playing games.
The Honourable Member for Leduc-Wetaskiwin.
Well, under the Liberals' new leadership, Canada's multi-front economic crisis has gotten objectively worse. The Liberal Prime Minister himself promised the $62 billion deficit. Their own budget shattered that promise, adding $16 billion in new debt, and they've added billions more in recent weeks. Young Canadians are taking on record personal debt to pay the bill. According to RBC, 64% of millennials are anxious about their financial future as monthly costs squeeze budgets. Which Liberal minister will stand now to explain to those young Canadians why they should take on more personal liability and stress to cover ever-increasing Liberal debt?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
You know, it's interesting. The Conservatives never tell us what they would cut. If they want to pursue this line of questioning, it's logical that they would go to another issue. Would they cut the Canada Child Benefit? They would. Would they cut child care? They certainly would. Would they cut pharmacare? They certainly would do that. Would they cut the school food program that we want to make permanent? They would do that. Would they not support them? These measures, they never have, they never will. What about a long-term focus, an opportunities agenda, jobs, a focus on families, youth? All those things are at stake, and we're pursuing exactly that. They should join us.
The Honourable Member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, millennials were told that if we worked hard, played by the rules, and planned for the future, we could build a stable life here in Canada. But a recent RBC poll shows that 57% have nothing left after paying their monthly bills, and 4 in 10 believe that they may never be debt-free. After years of soaring housing costs, persistent inflation, and higher taxes, my generation is carrying record personal debt while also being handed this Liberal government's debt to pay for. When will they stop loading debt onto our generation so young Canadians can build a life and not just struggle?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Sport.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the Conservatives are demonstrating that they have no credibility on affordability because they're ignoring all of the recommendations that the experts are making in order to pursue a more equitable future in Canada, Mr. Speaker. One of the recommendations they chose to ignore was the groceries and essentials benefit, Mr. Speaker. We are using a proven mechanism to provide relief to families in those income brackets that need it most with the rising cost of living, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives can quote the experts if they want, but I recommend they follow their recommendations as well.
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are tired of political talking points. The Liberals must have the humility to face the reality. Young Canadians are not falling behind by accident. They are being pushed behind by Liberal policies. They're not asking for programs. Talk to a millennial. They're asking them to get out of the way today. TransUnion Canada reports that household debt reached $2.6 trillion by the end of 2025. Families are living paycheck to paycheck just to keep a roof over their heads. When will this Liberal government realize you cannot spend your way to affordability and finally focus on bringing down...
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's a little bit ironic to be criticized about political talking points when the members opposite read from the same page over and over and over again. They ask the same 15 questions over and over and over again. They don't write their own questions. There's no creativity from that side, Mr. Speaker. I think the level in this debate deserves a little bit more. On housing, Mr. Speaker, we've invested $13 billion in non-market housing through Build Canada Homes, Mr. Speaker, after a successful pilot, a $1.5 billion pilot on co-op housing, Mr. Speaker. These strategies are working. Rents are coming down. Home ownership is within sight for young people, and that's because of the policies of this government. The Conservatives have a choice. They can get on board or not.
The honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Speaker, in South Shore St. Margaret's, Hobbold Industries is one of the companies in my riding that is proving that advanced manufacturing for defense isn't just an urban story, it's very much a rural one. Rural communities have the talent and the capacity to help Canada meet its defense needs. Can the Secretary of Defense for Procurement explain how the new defense industrial strategy will expand opportunities for rural manufacturers like Hobbolt's and create good-paying jobs for all Canadians? Thank you.
Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State for Defense Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for South Shore St. Margaret's for advocacy for Nova Scotia's manufacturing, like Hobbolt Industries. Companies like this prove that advanced defense manufacturing is thriving in rural Canada. Our defense industrial strategy makes procurement a driver of growth. In Atlantic Canada, the sector supports 10,000 good-paying jobs. Through Defence Investment Agency, at least 70% of our defence spending will focus on generating jobs and investments here at home. That makes work in communities like Chester and faster delivery for equipment to the Canadian Armed Forces. Thank you.
The honourable member for Richmond Hill South.
The hope of ever owning a home is slipping away for young Canadians. Nearly half of young Canadians are forced to move out of their communities they grew up in because they can no longer afford the Liberal housing hell. From 2019 to 24, for every 100 new adults added to our population, there were only 12 housing starts intended for ownership. This is less than half the pace of previous decades. Now a new CIBC report confirms what young Canadians already know. Homes are still too expensive to buy and not profitable to build. After years of Liberal rhetoric and red tape, when will this government finally scrap the GST on all new homes and let young Canadians build a life?
The Honourable Minister for Housing and Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, well, the good news is there is a tax break for first-time homebuyers coming. Thank members of this House for standing up for. This is really what we're seeing now is we're seeing prices start to come down, rents come down, home prices coming down. We see that in the new CMHC Housing Affordability Index report that came out this morning. The trend is in the right direction, but we have to double down. We have to focus on delivering Build Canada homes, $13 billion for affordable housing. We have to make sure that this entire House is committed to bringing down the price of housing for young Canadians.
Excellent. The honourable member for Richmond Hill South.
Instead of laying foundations for homes, this Liberal government is laying foundations for another bureaucracy. This Liberal Prime Minister promised to build at a pace not seen since the Second World War. Yet a recent report from the government's own housing agency says that home building is expected to drop in each of the next 3 years, with housing starts in 2028 falling as much as 18% compared to last year. That's 55% below what is necessary necessary to meet the Prime Minister's own targets. Instead of building homes, they're building roadblocks for the fourth Liberal housing bureaucracy. When will the Liberals finally admit that they themselves are the problem?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, again, to the member opposite, our next steps are critical, and the next step that this member can take is supporting the Build Canada Homes Act and making sure that this government has every tool available to invest in affordable housing.
What a good idea.
We have $13 billion labeled for non-market housing that will leverage tens of thousands of units of affordable housing from rental to affordable home ownership.
That's a good idea.
We need everybody on board with this, Mr. Speaker. This is not a time to take pot shots. It's not a time to fall back on a failed record that the Conservatives have on housing. Thank you.
The honourable member for York Durham.
A new report from CIBC confirms what young Canadians already know. The dream of home ownership is slipping away. In fact, the bank says prices are too high to buy and that the average down payment in Ontario is now nearly $300,000. That's an impossible number. But behind that number, Mr. Speaker, a young family who can't buy a home, start a family, or build a life. The bank says that unless we cut the cost of homes, things will only get worse. So here's our suggestion. Cut the cost of GST on all new homes. Will the Housing Minister agree to that?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, you'll forgive us if Canadians recognize that party has no credibility when it comes to housing. Their leader called middle-class housing shacks.
That's right.
He called co-op housing Soviet style, and that member mocked modular housing. That leader even called on his MPs to boycott the Housing Accelerator Fund that would have actually helped their ridings. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we're serious about getting houses built. That party is just full of obstruction and rhetoric. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Député de Mont-Saint-Bruno-L'Acadie.
The Honourable Member for Mont-Saint-Bruno-L'Acadie. Mr. Speaker, on Monday at the Human Resources Committee, our government once again tried to table a motion to study the National School Food Program after hearing credible witnesses explain how it helps children and families. However, Conservative MPs spent the session obstructing and denying the fact that food security is linked to affordability. They denied the impact of climate change on food systems and also denied the idea that families should not have to worry about whether their children ate lunch, whether they're eating enough vegetables, or whether they've had enough to eat. Can the Secretary of State for Children and Youth tell this House how the National School Food Program helps children eat well and helps families worry less?
I waited that long. Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et d'abord,
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague, the member for Mont-Saint-Bruno-L'Acadie, for his question. If the Conservative Party wants to talk about food insecurity, they should support the school food program. A new study by the Breakfast Club of Canada shows that when children eat well at school, their academic performance improves. Child health improves, and this program also helps families reduce their food spending. While they engage in pointless obstruction, we will continue to listen to educators and experts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Brantford South, Six Nations.
This week, Peel Police charged 4 men with sex trafficking girls as young as 11 years of age. Yet within 24 hours, these disgusting criminals were released on Liberal bail. Let that sink in. Grown men charged with exploiting young girls are now walking free. Wow. This is an absolute disgrace. This is what a broken justice system looks like. Yep. Enough is enough. When will this government stop coddling the worst criminals in our society and finally stand on the side of innocent children?
Here, here. Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just today, I was with Peel Regional Police at a human trafficking symposium, and we talked about these issues with survivors. It's really important that criminals of this type, this heinous crime, get the sentences that they deserve, and that is why, Mr. Speaker, we brought in place bail reform. Had the Conservatives cooperated, we could have had it passed before Christmas, but they chose to obstruct. I'm glad to see that the legislation is now progressing, and we could put an end to the revolving door.
Here, here.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
budget, the
that included zero funding for MMIWG and the Liberals' exclusion of Indigenous women in the development of Bill C-5, despite the high rates of violence around these projects. Mr. Speaker, will the government mandate enforceable community safety plans for corporations and restore funding to address this ongoing crisis?
The Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality.
We owe it to survivors and those we've lost to act and prevent gender-based violence. As we advance these major projects, we're working with communities to protect women, girls, and gender-diverse people. Through our National Action Plan, we're strengthening prevention and ensuring that survivors can access those supports. This is how we ensure progress never comes at the expense of the safety of women and girls in our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Colleagues, I would like to take a moment to bring to your attention a very important anniversary this week, the 150th anniversary of the Library of Parliament.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Elbows out.
Elbows up.
Had no interest in playing the puck, and he leaned into...
Look, I don't think one needs to respond to every comment. Look, Stephanie, I comply with the rules.
Conflicts of interest.
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will.
WTF.
Here, here.
The one we call Canadian. Canadians.